Thank you for thinking of us. So that's great. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Henrik Bliddal. I'm the Deputy Secretary General of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, a small organization here in Brussels with 28 members of staff here at the International Secretariat. So I'm very happy to speak to you about our modernization and digitalization efforts recently. We pride ourselves with a long track record, actually, of modernization, and currently we're in the middle of a new wave at the moment. Just before I dive into the nitty-gritty of all of this, let me just say a few words about the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, because everybody knows NATO, but not everybody knows the Assembly. So we were founded in 1955, so a couple of years after NATO was founded itself, and we serve as a consultative interparliamentary organization for the North Atlantic Alliance. The Assembly provides a unique forum for members of Parliament to discuss and influence decisions on alliance security. We facilitate parliamentary awareness and understanding of the key issues affecting the security of the Euro-Atlantic area, and we support national parliamentary oversight over defense and security. The Assembly is institutionally separate from NATO, and that's a key point. Our parliamentarians like their independence from the government structure, so to speak, and I'm sure plenty of the attendees will understand that as well. But we serve as an essential link between NATO and the parliaments of the NATO nations. So coming back to technology, and that's why we're all here, the Assembly was actually instrumental in setting up NATO's first science committee in 1957. It was a long time ago, but ever since we've been a vigilant guardian of NATO's technological edge, because that's one of the pillars that makes NATO strong. But equally important, we have always practiced what we preached here at the Assembly itself, because one thing is to tell NATO to be technologically advanced, but the other thing is, of course, to do it yourself. So what we do is we strive to provide the best possible services to national delegations, and cutting edge technology plays a big role in this, of course. So I'm sure the COVID pandemic and its impact on modernization across parliamentary institutions remains a key theme at this second edition of Bússola Tech as well. And indeed, the pandemic massively sped up our innovation and adaptation over the last year and a half, as you can imagine. However, our current wave of transformation actually predates COVID-19 and goes back to about 2017, if I had to put a date on it. And to a certain extent, this helped us navigate this extreme shock that came last year, at least internally here in the workings of the International Secretariat. How to adapt our services, our program of work is a different matter, and we try to do that well as well. So looking pre-pandemic, we already had revamped our website, making it more user-friendly and modern. We modernized our intranet for communication with national delegations, because our national delegations don't sit in Brussels, they sit in their capitals. So that's a key tool for us to communicate with them. We introduced a platform for sharing documents during our Assembly meetings, which enabled us to go almost paperless. We're not quite there yet, but we are very, very paper light these days. We licensed a suite of IT tools that to enable further innovation, which came in very handy during the pandemic. And we already had conducted a review of the tech marketplace, so to speak, to see where else could we make further efficiency and effectiveness gains. But of course, the pandemic forced us to change, really adapt and innovate almost overnight. I mean, I think that holds true for all parliamentary institutions, for everybody across the world to a certain extent. So internally, we really had no real tradition of teleworking, for example. We had to institute that across the institution to, first of all, of course, guarantee the health of our staff as much as possible, but also to contribute to the public health management of the pandemic. So as you can imagine, all of the departments we have here at the Secretariat were severely affected by this move from an office space where collaboration was second nature to an online space where collaboration really had to be redefined and internalized. Of course, the private sector and big business, they have tradition for this, but parliamentary institutions like ours sometimes have lagged behind in this aspect. So just to give you some examples, so our document service, which treats all of our documents in terms of editing, translation, and proofreading. Since we're a bilingual institution, it traditionally involves a lot of face-to-face interaction. So that was a real change to go all online and do teleworking. Our communications department also needed to really deal with a much higher and very different workload as we tried to rethink our communications with our delegations, members, the public as well, of course. And so that's the internal side, the inner workings of the International Secretariat. But of course, the big thing, raison d'être, is of course to work with our members of parliament back home in their capitals. And here we had to fully transform the program of work that we normally do. We normally conduct 35 to 40 activities a year. So from small presidential visits, just a few people, to committee visits with, a couple dozen members of parliament, and then our big, large biannual sessions, which brings together hundreds of MPs from across the alliance and beyond, actually, from all continents, actually, with our partners. So during the pandemic, close coordination among parliaments was and remains essential to democratic, effective, and coherent policy responses. And that includes, of course, the reactions to the COVID-19 crisis. So the other thing that was essential was that we really deliver on our mandate, which is to address the critical challenges the transatlantic alliance faces. So those challenges haven't disappeared just because COVID appeared, and indeed sometimes worsened during the pandemic. So we really had to change a lot here because parliamentary diplomacy has always, and I think continues to remain, a very people-focused and personal business, so to speak. It's all about the interaction between members of parliament, and we needed to ensure that could remain the case. And so there simply was no other choice but to move online. And we implemented a range of tools to that effect. So over the course of last year, we had some 30 online meetings in various shapes and forms. And in 2021, we had about 25 already. So in terms of the challenge externally, towards our customers, so to speak, our political bosses, whatever you want to call it, perhaps the biggest challenge that we had was the holding of our annual session, which brings together hundreds of MPs from North America and Europe primarily, but same goes for North Africa, Asia, Middle East. So we managed to succeed on this, and then we delivered on our priorities last year. We adopted important policy recommendations for the alliance, and we elected our new political leadership. So that was very important to everyone. We couldn't just stop doing our business. So in moving our activities online, I think the two biggest challenges were how do we hold meetings with simultaneous interpretation into multiple languages, as well as voting, especially anonymous voting, which we, as an interparliamentary assembly, do quite a lot, maybe more so than national parliaments, because there's a lot of positions open every year. I'd be happy to go in greater detail during the Q&A, but there was a big thing. And so at the start of the pandemic, the market was very thin in terms of technologies, and the companies working on this were, and to a degree, remain in a developmental stage in terms of multilingual meetings and voting. But on a positive note, it also meant that the companies that did work on this were very agile. The company we partnered with could adapt to the unique needs of our organization in tandem, so to speak. So that was extremely helpful. Now we wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. And as you probably are aware of, I mean, needless to say, these adaptation processes, they're never without hiccups. But I think overall we were lucky. We had the right tools in place, even though they were unexploited at the time. And we have an international secretariat which is extremely competent and agile, because we are small. I think that's very key in this aspect. And they have a can-do attitude that really has been forged over the years through many challenges that we had to face over the years. But I also must say that our MPs in the capitals were extremely resilient to this abrupt change and adapted the new ways we had to implement very rapidly across the membership, I have to say, actually. And of course, what was also really key, and I think that is also what this conference is about as well, is learning from our colleagues, for us in our member parliaments, of course, who also had to go through similar process, and of course have a much bigger staff to adapt to this challenge, and also our sister parliamentary assemblies, so Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, OC Parliamentary Assembly, IPU as well, European Parliament. So we were very much in contact with all of them. So today, our modernization work continues apace. We picked it up before, and we continue with our strand as well. So currently, our most pressing concern is the organization of our annual session coming up in a month, which will be the first time in 2 years actually that our members get together in person. So that will be a big one at a particular critical time for NATO as well. And the key challenge here, the technology challenge here, is that it is an in-person session, but we have to have an element for those delegations that are unable to attend in person or because of COVID restrictions that remain in place to a certain degree. And other modernization efforts were planned before COVID as well, but they took on renewed urgency because of it, of course. So we're currently implementing a new database as well as new finance and accounting software. They're really two key applications, and to a certain degree, they're the backbone of almost every activity we do at the Assembly. And we're also making a move towards that all tools and services are accessible to our NATO PA staff and our national staff or colleagues in national parliaments, no matter where they find themselves. We have to do some other work on refining our data privacy implementation to get rid of cumbersome workarounds that we had to put in place. And that's, I think, the key is to adapt and leverage some of the innovations that were forced upon us during COVID to the new normal. So what can we use that experience to provide better services to our members, to our delegations, for example, to react to political events much faster. And here I want to end and open up to discussion. I think I see several trends which will force us to innovate more and faster, actually. We must better connect with a whole new generation of politicians for whom digital tools are second nature, which wasn't the case just a few years ago. And the pace of political change is also picking up as well. So that's something we need to be better, I think, and we need to face up to. There's an ever increasing pace of elections, policy, and then the policy cycle speeds up. Crises happen more often, so we need to adapt that through technology as well. And so the need for a renewed push on modernization and digitalization was extremely and abundantly clear even before COVID, but the pandemic has really starkly demonstrated that the Assembly can hardly afford not to be prepared for the future. And the good news here is that our political leadership is fully back in our modernization, and we are in close tandem with them to get this working.